As someone who lives remotely, there is one question I get asked the most, and that is, don't you get lonely? To be honest, I don't really like this question. It assumes that being physically alone must mean you're lonely, that it's something negative. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I've always really enjoyed spending time alone and chosen to live in places of solitude. But this was often met with questions like, don't you feel like you're missing out? What do you even do all day? As if spending time alone was such an unfamiliar thing. But maybe that's the truth. There's this quote I read the other day, and I think it's quite applicable to this situation. It's, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And I do think that's true. I feel like we're so used to having all of these different distractions that our brain is just kind of in overdrive. I feel like we don't really have a lot of time or room for introspection now. There's not a lot of moments in which you can really allow yourself to feel what you need to feel and think what you need to think. Fuck. I've actually been feeling a bit lost. I think just the problem with this distraction is that it makes you feel like there is always more to be done. And so doing something as selfish as spending quality time with yourself is deemed as negative because you're not really working towards anything. But I don't really agree with that, because I think spending time alone means you're working on building a relationship with yourself, which I feel like is one that kind of gets neglected a lot nowadays. And because we're so disconnected from ourselves, it makes spending time alone a bit scary. I used to even think that I was a bit antisocial or something, because I enjoyed my alone time so much, but I don't think that's true. I don't think I'm antisocial. I do think I've managed to create a space for myself in which I can just feel really at peace, and I don't fear being alone because of it. I can spend days at a time just in my own company and not get bored or lonely. So, I have been snowed in for the past couple of days, almost a week at this point. And I'm also alone for 10 days. To be snowed in and alone, it's pretty interesting. But it honestly hasn't been that bad. I'm dressed and ready for a hike in the snow. It's been a really nice day. I'm very, very content right now, so. I find it especially interesting that the activities that I turn to when I'm alone, or I guess, just my hobbies, are things that I used to do when I was younger, but then somewhere along the way, when I was growing up, they were deemed as uncool, so I stopped doing them. And then now when I spend time alone and I actually try to discover what my interests are and what it is that I enjoy doing, a lot of the times it's things that I did when I was younger, which leads me to believe that spending time alone is really just a way to reconnect to who you are. You don't need to worry about whether the things you're doing are deemed uncool. If you like them, you can do them. I played the piano when I was younger. I used to actually hate piano. I think it was more just the fact that I had to go to the lessons and I didn't really want to. Whenever I come home again, I always play it a bunch. Pretty cool escape. My timing for this walk is impeccable because I can already see the sunset and it's very pretty. It's crazy. Ultimately, I think loneliness is kind of inevitable. Not only that, but also illogical. I mean, I've lived in cities and studied in cities, and I felt lonelier there than I do here in a town of like 20 people. I think it's a really nice feeling knowing that when you are left alone, you'll be fine. And I do believe that there's a lot of power and strength in that knowledge. But I think it's knowledge that can only be obtained if you genuinely spend time alone and learn to enjoy spending time alone and form this genuine connection with yourself. I mean, you're kind of the only constant in your life, so I think building a solid relationship with yourself is one of the most important things to do. Before I end the video, I quickly wanted to talk a bit about Musicbed. They reached out to me recently and asked me to become a friend of the brand, which has been very exciting. I've been using Musicbed for a little while now, and it's really made my editing process so much more efficient because they have this AI tool that allows me to just plug in any of my favorite songs by popular artists, and Musicbed will find similar ones for me to use, which has been quite a lifesaver as someone who is very picky with the music that I choose for my videos. Not only that, but I've also actually been able to find and use music from some of my favorite artists, which has been a very pleasant surprise. So if you're interested in trying out Musicbed, there will be a link in my description. In return, you'll also be supporting my channel.